webinar tonight is all about the Synoptic exam for the foundation level. I'm not going to go through sort of all the differences between AQ 2013 and AQ 2016. It's purely about that exam which comes up with AQ 2016. AQ 2016 brought in the Synoptic exam, which you'll see will cover more than just one unit, which is a new thing for AAT. And the reason why it was introduced is because of the new formative exam, a summative exam right at the end that tests everything. And for apprenticeships, which are big money for AAT, you need to have this exam to get funding. Funding is a big thing. However, it's not just a thing just to get money in at all. It is what employers want. So the idea is, rather than you learning about one unit, passing an exam and forgetting it, learning about one unit, passing an exam and forgetting it, it's all about, are you good enough to do the job? So it brings everything together and brings it into real world scenarios. So it's not just looking at everything in sort of insular, unique units. It's more about, have you got the skills to do the job? And I think it is a really good change. So without further ado, let's move on. I should say, if you have any questions or queries or anything like that in the exam, please just type in the chat box below as and when it pops up. We don't wait around on form, don't worry about that. So any questions, just let me know. So as you can see here, the Synoptic exam tests you on 4 different units. So you've got bookkeeping transactions, which is the first one most people start with, bookkeeping controls, elements of costing, and working effectively in finance. Now, the using accounting software unit does not go into the Synoptic exam. So it's very, very standalone. So the way you would study is you would do bookkeeping transactions, and then that has its own individual exam. So that's a computer-based test that you'll do, and it'll just be on bookkeeping transactions. So once you pass that, you would then move on to bookkeeping controls, which again has its own individual unit, likewise with elements of costing. So once you've taken and passed the 3 exams for bookkeeping transactions, bookkeeping controls, and the elements of costing, you would then start to study the working effectively in finance unit. Now, on AQ 2013, the working effectively in finance unit had its own exam. So what we teach in the working effectively in finance unit is pretty much the same, to be honest. It's still the sort of, the business skills, literacy, numeracy, how a business can be structured, communication, that sort of thing. But it doesn't have its own exam. So all that material that we used to teach in working effectively, then tested in the AQ 2013 work effectively exam, is still there. However, it is tested in the Synoptic Assessment. So you'll still need to learn all that material, but it will be tested in the Synoptic Assessment along with some of the material from bookkeeping transactions, bookkeeping controls, and elements of costing. So in effect, that exam is an exam on 4 different units. So we strongly suggest the 3 mandatory units that have their own individual exams, sit them, move on to working effectively, sit the Synoptic exam, then move on to using accounting software, because that has nothing to do with the Synoptic exam. It's very, very standalone. And you could technically do the accounting software exam first before you start bookkeeping transactions, but I don't recommend it, because there's a bit of double entry bookkeeping that you learn in bookkeeping transactions will help you with using accounting software. So it's good to study bookkeeping transactions before you do using accounting software. Now, you'll see here that each assessment counts towards the overall grade of the level. You will get an overall grade for your AQ 2016 course, which is a new introduction for AQ 2016, which again, I think is another great thing. We'll go over the actual grades that are available, but now for each of these exams here, you will get a percentage score, and the overall percentage score goes towards your overall grade. And you can see here the weightings of the different units. So bookkeeping transactions is a higher weighting than elements of costing, bookkeeping controls, and using account software. And that synoptic exam is a large 30% of your overall grade. The reason being because it's going to test you on some of the other units as well as all the working effectively material as well. So you want to be well prepared for your synoptic exam if you're aiming for a good grade, which I'm sure you all are. So before I go any further, has anyone got any questions on the structure of AQ 2016 and when you would probably want to do your synoptic exam? I see Claire's typing. So it just means that it's not as flexible as it used to be. It used to be you could, well, it was a good idea to do control accounts and journals after processing bookkeeping transactions, but other than that, you could do elements of cost, you could do costing, or you could do working effectively in either order. Now you can't really. Does it matter if you use account software prior to working effectively in finance? It does actually, because if you've studied bookkeeping transactions, the bookkeeping controls, and elements of costing, then you do using accounting software, so you study that, and then you do working effectively in finance, it's going to be an even longer time since you last studied bookkeeping transactions. So you're going to have to, it's going to take you a little bit longer to get back up to speed with bookkeeping transactions. So ideally, you don't want that big gap between bookkeeping transactions and the synoptic exam, because you're going to have to go back over bookkeeping transactions. So I would suggest leaving using accounting software at the end. Then it can't get involved with the synoptic exam at all. That's a very good question, though. You used to be able to sort of mix and match units at AQ 2013. It's not so much of an option now. I mean, I suppose you could do elements of costing before bookkeeping transactions and bookkeeping controls, but that's about it. Well, that's the way the college want to do it. That's the way they want to do it. That's not how I would do it. I just think putting an even larger gap between when you sit the synoptic exam, which will test you on bookkeeping transactions, bookkeeping controls, and when you actually studied them, doesn't seem to be what I would do. I don't know why. I can't think. I'm sure there is a reason why, but I just don't understand why people want to do that. But each to their own. It's just because you can see the synoptic exam here. It measures off those 4 units. The 4 units are you're gonna have to be up to exam speed on all 4. You know, why would you want to delay it even longer? But anyway, that's unto themselves. So moving on to the actual synoptic assessment. So as mentioned before, working effectively is only assessed in the synoptic assessment, although the following units do have their own individual exams as well. Now, as I said, computerized exact coding is not part of the synoptic. Now, it is a 2-hour exam. So much like the other units of 2-hour exams, you probably wouldn't spend 2 hours doing elements of costing. If you're spending 2 hours doing your elements of costing exam, you're probably you're struggling a bit. It's not time pressured. It is a testing exam, but it is not really time pressured. The synoptic exam is 2 hours, and I would imagine you will need the full 2 hours. Now, the key difference is when you sit bookkeeping transactions, you'll sit the exam. The exams invigilator will come through and say, "Well done, you have passed. Here's your results," straight away. Same with bookkeeping controls and elements of costing. In the synoptic exam, there are human marked elements, which, much like the written questions at level 4, have to be marked by a human, which means they need to give you a 6-week wait for them to get it marked, to get it returned to you. So what you would do is normally sit the synoptic exam, and you're not AAT foundation level qualified because you've not got your last result. So that's the point I would suggest you do your using accounting software unit while you're waiting for that result. Now, the idea is with these synoptic exams is because when you come into the old level 4 on AQ 2013, you've done all the numerical stuff, and at level 4, you've suddenly got written questions which people hate and struggle with. So the idea is to get written questions embedded with students at all the levels. So it should make that transition between level 3 and level 4, or the advanced to professional as it is now, a lot less daunting. No, it doesn't always take 6 weeks. You've got to remember, AAT exams are seasonal. So even with distance learning courses, there's generally a big January intake and there is a big September intake. And most people, if they start in January or they start in September, would want to get finished before the summer holidays. Colleges want to get finished before summer holidays. Distance learning students that generally are a little bit older and have got kids and things like that want to get done before the summer holidays. You sit an exam just before the summer holidays, you will wait a full 6 weeks. Whereas most people won't be sitting an exam in September, which is when most people start a level. So if you sit an exam then, you can get it back sooner. I've seen exams come back in 4 weeks, but you need to assume it is going to be up to 6 weeks. They never, ever, ever go over 6 weeks. That doesn't happen, but it will be 6 weeks. Now, one thing that we're going to come to percentages later, but one thing the AAT do want to stress is that the pass mark on AQ 2013 is 70%. The pass mark on AQ 2016 is still 70%. So it's not got any harder, it's not got any easier, it's still the same level. So if when you say I'm AAT qualified, you'll still be as good on if you were passed on AQ 2016 as what you were on AQ 2013. So it should not affect the value that employers put into AAT students or qualified members, because they still have the same level of competency. So that's the exam. It's a 2-hour exam. It's a computer-based assessment where you wait for your results. So what kind of things will be tested? So there's going to be a lot there working effectively from that unit, because that's the only time it's tested. So it's like the understanding of the role of the accounting function in an organisation. So that's the differences between the financial accounting department and the management accounting department. Exciting things like ethics, they're embedded throughout everything within AAT. So ethics is going to come out, workload management, time management, prioritisation of jobs, that sort of thing. All this stuff that comes to in working effectively, policies and procedures, exciting things like that. And the other thing is that they're looking for is they have written questions now. So they've never had this opportunity before to test your actual understanding and communication skills, because it's always been computer-based tests which are numerical. So if it's 5 or if it's 4, you need to know that that's what the AAT would test. With now the written, it can test your understanding, deep learning. So things like communication, they're really going to be really key in communication. So there's going to be a lot there where you are communicating concepts to people who are not accountants. So it's not about can you do semi-variable, fixed cost, variable cost. Can you explain that concept to someone who doesn't understand them? And then it'll bring in sort of sustainability and other exciting things. And then it'll bring in sort of time management, team management, and hierarchical structures of managers, directors, sales ledger clerks, things like that. So to cut a long story short, an awful lot is what they can test. And obviously you've got anything that can come up from bookkeeping transactions, bookkeeping controls, and elements of costing. So it's not one for question spotting at all. You've got to be prepared for anything. So the key thing is there is no standard style of question. So you're going to get 7 questions. Question 1 literally could be anything. It could be a bit about elements of costing. It could be a bit about booking transactions with a bit of the working effectively unit tagged on. It's not going to be standardized like booking transactions exams is. So booking transactions, the first thing you will see in that exam is you entering information from the day books into the main ledger. That is what you will do first. We just know this. In the Synoptic, you can't say that that is the first thing you're going to do. So the formats will vary. So you might have a big question 1, you might have a small question 1, and a large question 2. It really can be mixed up. And there's been lots of different question types that you've not seen before. So don't think it's just going to be very, very standardized. It could be great big questions on a real small subject, or it could be lots of little questions on a wide variety of subjects. It could be anything. And unfortunately, it could be detailed knowledge. You can't just assume it's going to be the general broad strokes of bookkeeping transactions. It could be something really, really technical, settlement discounts from booking transactions. So you need to know how to calculate them. You can't just assume it's not going to come up, because it could if you're unlucky. Or lucky if you know your stuff. Then you've got to apply it and put in context to the scenario. So each question was based on a real life scenario. So it's not a case of here's some numbers. It's a case of in this business, you need to, this has happened, and can you put this in context with that business? And something that I quite like is an integrated approach. So what that's going to be is, for example, what you could be is we've decided we're going to introduce a ethical policy that's going to change how we operate our business, and we're going to have a big. So we're going to talk about how that'd be great, how it's going to affect sustainability, it's going to affect ethics, it's going to save the planet, that sort of stuff. So a lot of work effectively things, and then it moves on from there, and it'll say, right, we're running an event. We're going to have 50 people to train them up. It's going to cost £50 per person, and it's going to be £100 flat fee. What's the total cost? What's the total cost if we run this sustainability project for 200 people? So it's like the sustainable part, and then we're bringing in a bit of elements of costing, but based on that same scenario. So it's integrated. It's like a real world thing. It's like what you would do in the job. You wouldn't just think, right, let's introduce some ethical procedure, and then think, right, that's great, let's stop there. You would then go, well, that's great, what's it going to cost? So it's all integrated. So it is something that, it should be what you were expected to do in your day job. It should make you more employable. So that's what the exam was going to be like. Obviously, once you've sat it, the one thing you'll want to know is if you passed. But you don't just get a pass now. On the Synoptic, it's going to count towards your overall grade. So this will be a large, as we saw, 30% of your overall grade comes from this Synoptic exam. And so to get a pass, like before, it was same mark, 70%. That has not changed. But if you get over 80%, you're on course for a merit. If you get over 90%, you're on course for a distinction. Now, well, it's all been recorded now, so I will send out the recording later. Now, this is a new thing for AAT, that you get an overall grade. As it's new for AAT, I don't think employers are really aware of this. But if you were going for a job, it might be worth stressing that you got a merit or you got a distinction. I don't think employers will be going to you and go, did you get a merit or distinction? Because I don't think employers are really aware of this at all. They'll still be calling it level 2, 3, and 4 AAT. They'll be like old school. So you do get a grade. You do get a percentage for each exam. It will go towards your overall grade, which, if you do get that distinction, it does make you stand out from the crowd. Now, crucially, it's a 2-hour exam. You can move from one task to another. So, if you get a distinction, will it actually say on the certificate? Good question. I believe so. It would. I've not had anyone get a certificate through as yet, but yeah, it will do. It will say with distinction, just like you would with a degree. So it would say, I don't know, degree in engineering, first class honours, engineering in, I don't know, 2-2 or whatever. Similar sort of thing, but yes, it would. But yeah, one thing I want to say is you can move from task 1 to another. So you go from start of task 1, you go to task 7. You've got to do them all. So I would suggest just work through an order. There's nothing to be gained. But if there's a question you're struggling on, you can move on, go to the next question, go back, and then you come back to it. I know that's obvious because every other exam you'll have sat is like that, but I just want to stress that because some of the other synoptics, i.e. the one in the professional advanced level, is split into parts. And once you finish one part, you cannot go back into that first part once you've moved on. So make sure that part 1 is correct at the advanced level, because once you're in part 2, you can't go back to it. And time does not move from one to another. At the foundation level, you can move between one level to another. So, sorry, one question to another, you can go back to them, you can change your answers. So don't worry too much about that. Is the AAT site still freezing? As in the AAT mocks and things like that? And the AAT e-learning? I wasn't aware that there was an issue with the AAT site. That's news to me. As far as I'm aware, everything's up and running. Do you mean the real exams or the mock exams? Because I've been in the mock exams today and they seem okay to me. I didn't sit there and do a full 2-hour exam, but I have been in them. But as far as I'm aware, it is business as usual. And were they also? I imagine that's maybe down to the exam centre if you do sit them all at the same time. I've not had any students have issues with the actual technical aspect of the Synoptic and AQ 2016 exams. They seem to be running okay as far as I'm aware. I think that might just be sort of a one-off. But yeah, I've not heard any issues about that. Got people complaining about other things about AQ 2016, but not that. So, like I say, there's going to be 7 tasks, and they're going to be integrated. And as you can see, you've only got 4 units that can be tested. So they're going to be mixed up and all over those 7 tasks, so that it's not going to be like that's my booking transactions task done. Move on to elements of costing done. It's not going to be like that at all. So it could be that you have to go through elements of costing and you cost out what it costs to produce, I don't know, a table. So you calculate how much your table costs. You're then told that you're going to add 20% profit onto that. And then it will say, well, what would be the invoice if you've done that? And then you add VAT on it and a settlement discount. And then what would you do, ethically if someone claimed the discount when they weren't done it? So it brings in working effectively, booking transactions, elements of costing all together in like one integrated scenario. Double entry is going to be key. Double entry is key at the foundation level anyway. So you can't just do booking transactions, pass the exam, and think forget about double entry. You just can't. It's going to be there. Booking controls, it's all about journals and how you correct errors. And this would be like one of the key things I'd suggest you make sure you do it, because errors are really, really good, because errors also link into ethics because people are doing things wrong. So I would suggest it's a really nice way for the examiner to link working effectively with booking controls. So journals, correcting journals, I would say, if I had to pick something, it would be that will always be in the exam. I really would. And then elements of costing, it's one of those things. You could get a question about cost behavior. And so you've got to split it out between fixed, semi-variable, and variable costs. Or you could get a question about cost behavior and you've got to explain cost behavior. So not only have you got all these questions that could come up, but they could all come up in either a numerical type or a written type. So it's not just a case of can you do a journal, but can you explain a journal? Can you explain what you're trying to do? So it's communication skills in communicating accounting concepts. So it's like I say, it could be anything. It really could. And then working effectively, obviously, there's going to be lots about working effectively in the exam because it's the only time when working effectively will be tested. Whereas they maybe could lower down the double entry testing in a synoptic exam because they know you can do it because you did it in the actual computer-based test for bookkeeping transactions. Whereas things like time management, business structures, they're going to be in the exam because if they don't test them here, they won't be able to ever test them, and they don't know that you can manage your time or you can manage others and things like that. So a lot of the work effective stuff will just definitely be in there, but it's the other sort of mandatory units you can't guess what's going to be in there because it has previously been tested. So they don't have to test it again because they've already tested it. Whereas working effectively, they haven't tested it, so this is a one chance to make sure they've got it. But to cut long story short, it could be anything in any order, and it could be in any format. So expect the unexpected. So written tasks. This is what level 4 students really don't like because they're not used to them. So the idea is they brought them in at the new foundation level, and the key thing is expressing it succinctly. We're not looking for an essay. We're not looking for an essay in any way, shape, or form. You've got to Make your point, explain your point, and apply your point. So make a point, explain why it's interesting, because if it's not interesting, why are you making your point, and apply it to the scenario. So don't just say something that might be interesting, but if it's not relevant to the actual scenario that you've been given, you're just making general points that you could have pre-prepared that are not exactly what the examiner is looking for, because they've given you a scenario. So like I say, make it relevant. Pick up information from the scenario. The scenario has been written for a reason. All that material has been, all those points there in the scenario are there for you to act on. So almost run down, although you can't do it because it's a computer-based test, tick them off and say, I've made a point about that. I've made a point about that. Write enough. Don't just say, the variable costs. We've doubled the number of units, therefore the cost has gone up. You want to explain a bit more. Because it's variable costs are directly linked to output, you would expect the variable cost to double in line with the number of units produced. And likewise, explain. Don't state, don't list. State and list will get you 1 mark. Explaining why it's interesting, why it's relevant, and how it's relevant to the scenario. No. You'll be glad to know there are no marks lost for spelling, punctuation, or grammar. However, if it is unreadable, you will lose marks. If the examiner can understand what you're trying to get across, you will still get marks. So do not worry about it. It's not a test of your English or spelling or punctuation or grammar. Do not worry about that. I was thinking about the bigger picture, i.e. something's happened. How does that affect the business as a whole? So if something's going wrong in the accountancy department, how does that affect the business in total? The other thing is impact and extend. So it's all about, if something's interesting, make a point. If it's not interesting, don't make a point. The whole point is, don't go on about something that it really isn't all that interesting. I think my webcam's just died on the ghost. So not to worry, as long as you can all still hear me, can't you? Cool, not to worry, we'll just give up on the webcam. And then, so obviously, only make interesting points. If it's not interesting, don't write about it. Really don't. And then P, make a point, explain your point, apply it to the scenario. So that's the written task. There will be written tasks. You can't just assume that, hope they might not come up, because there will be written tasks. So that's how you should attempt them. So going back to the original question, which was, can you use linear functions to explain answers? So there's a fixed cost. You could, Katie, but I would like some sort of narrative to go with it. So don't just go, hey, here you are, here's a formula. We're not looking for that sort of stuff. We're looking for you to sort of explain to people who don't understand that sort of stuff quite what you're getting across. So it's almost as much about explaining it than actually calculating it. No, like I say, you could get a written question about this. You could get a written question about that. Don't worry too much about thinking that's going to be a written question. This is going to be a written question, because it may well not be. So don't worry about question spotting. That's that. So yeah, don't worry about linear function as well. Don't worry about that. That isn't going to come up. Cool. Now the other thing I want to say is all the other computer-based tests, they are all on demand, just like you would. So we ring up the exam centre, say, "Hey, you got space at this point?" They'll go, "Yep," and then they will say, "I can book you in." Now the synoptic exams are not on demand. However, the point with the foundation level is it's more of a case of when are they not available? So you can see here that it's 1 week out of 4 that they're not available. So, in October, there's 5 weeks and it's not available for one and it's available for all the others. So don't overly worry. When you get to the later levels, you see the advanced level, that and the pressure level, they're only available like every 6 or 8 weeks or so. But at this level, financial, don't worry too much about it. They pretty much are on demand. And these are the ones for into the remainder of the year. But at this level, don't worry about it, that they are just pretty much there. So, in summary, you're going to get a 2-hour assessment. You've said a range of tasks, some of which will be written, but you do not know which ones. You don't know which subject or where they're going to come up. You just know that they will be there. Now, this new bit about explaining financial information to non-accountants is new to AQ 2016. Anything that's new, I generally would bet, is likely to come up. So explaining accounting concepts, cost behaviour, double-entry bookkeeping, correct journals to someone who's never studied that, I would say you need to be comfortable with doing that. Now, it says here, you're encouraged to proceed through the tasks in the Foundation Synoptic in the order presented. You don't have to. I mean, you've got to do them all at some point. There's only 7 tasks, though, so each task is a large part of the overall mark. But you can come back to questions. You can skip questions and come back to it, or change your answers. So it's not as crucial as it is in later levels. But like I say, you've got to do them all at some point. So don't worry too much there. So, how we suggest you should study for your synoptic exam. Now, this is assuming you've taken and passed bookkeeping transactions, bookkeeping controls, and elements of costing. You then want to study working effectively, because that is new material that will be in the exam and a large part of the exam. So once you've done that, you're then going to have to go back to the 3 other core papers. So bookkeeping transactions, bookkeeping controls, and elements of costing. You're going to have to go back to them, and you're going to have to review them. It might be worth doing some of the mocks again. You've got the AAT mocks. You'll have forgotten about the answers then, so make sure that you're comfortable. You pretty much are up to exam standard on all of them. I know it's a big ask, but you don't want to have any weak subjects. The other thing is, the AAT have got some sample assessments online. Your training provider has probably given you some sample assessments as well. Do not assume that any of those exams are going to be a like-for-like template of how your exam is going to be. Do not expect that. They're just a guide, and they're just a test that you could have passed this exam. They're just a good indicator that you are ready. Do not expect that task 1 is going to be bookkeeping transactions with elements of costing, a bit of work effectively put on the end of it, which is a written question. It will not be like that. It's very, very unlikely. So you want to spend your time working on as many different exam type questions as possible. So if your 25 has lots of mocks, do all of them. You're only really cheating yourself if you skip a mock or 2. Do as many of them as you can. Do the AAT mocks. Do the AAT e-learning. Read the examiner's feedback and things like that. Get as much information as you can for this one. Because, like I say, you've got to wait 6 weeks. It's all right. It's not all right, but if you do fail bookkeeping transactions, you can have another go of it in a week. You don't want to be halfway through using accounting software to find out you failed your synoptic exam 6 weeks ago. Then you've got to go back over it, get back up to speed. You really want to make sure that this is a first-time pass. And then finally, practice your written questions especially. And the other thing is that I say, if you have a tutor, get your tutor to look at your work, because you can look at a numerical question. If you've written 5 and the model answer is 4, it's clearly wrong. If you've written 5 and the model answer is 5, it's clearly right. Written questions are notoriously difficult to mark yourself. So you might have written something that's not in the model answers. You think, oh, it's rubbish, but it might have been a very good point. It's just not the standard answer. You would still get marks for that. Or you might think, write something you think is really good, and it's just rubbish. So I would strongly suggest, if possible, get someone else to look at your written questions. And above everything, do as many as you possibly can. So, has anyone got any questions specifically about the Synoptic exam, but AQ 2016 in general? Um, yes, I mean there are many providers out there. Some will sell just books. Some will sell like a self-study course for that one unit that's quite cheap. You don't have to sign up for the whole online level with Tutor Spot or anything like that. So yes, you can get extra mocks, extra material from what there are, four main publishers for AAT materials. So there are. I would strongly suggest, if possible, get any extra books and mocks and things like that from a wide variety of publishers as possible because it's only going to help. As well as you've got the AAT stuff as well. Um, it's one of those things that the longer you delay it, the longer it is before that you sat booking transactions. So you've got to go back over there. However, you don't want to be rushing into it if you're not ready. It's one of the things. It's like a dentist. You got to do it. It's not fun or exciting, but it is something that I wouldn't keep putting off and putting off and putting off. At some point, you're gonna have to have a go at it. Um, in terms of £35 for first tuition self-study packs, you're quite right, Debbie. Um, we haven't really practice with written questions. I would strongly suggest you do practice your written questions. And no, there won't just be on working effectively. Like I said, it could be explaining things from elements of costing. It could be explaining things from bookkeeping controls. You've got 7 tasks. I would say there's going to be at least a written question in each task. That's 7 written questions. There's only 4 units. The odds are there's going to be a written question on every unit. So I would strongly try and practice written questions on any unit. Well, not any unit, because not computerized scanners don't come up to it, but the ones that are going to be there. Strongly recommend you do that. That's good to hear. But yeah, I mean, not just us, but get as much material as you possibly can for this. It's one of those things you don't want to find out 6 weeks after the event that you failed. You might not done your study for 6 weeks if you're doing it last, then you've got to go back over it. You might be in the middle of another unit. You want to make sure, above all, this is a first time pass. Yes, on the AAT website there is one sample. No, there's 2 now. I just say one sample assessments for this unit. Strongly recommend you do them. However, don't expect that those 2 mocks are going to be like the real exam. They are not. They're just a guide as to what may come up and in what style it may come up as. Yes, you can start level 3 if you fail the Synoptic. I assume you would want to go back to the Synoptic, but yeah, there's no reason why you couldn't start level 3. The thing is, with it being on demand, I would suggest you probably stick with the Synoptic, but you could enroll on level 3. But yeah, there is no requirement that you must have completed everything from level 2 before you start. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't say that. You must complete everything from the foundation level before you can start the advanced. It's not like that at all. Colleges sometimes have rules that they won't let you, but from the AAT's point of view, there is no reason why not. Has anyone else got any questions about anything? I'm here for the next 20 minutes. Sorry about my webcam dying. Gutted about that. Will do. Cool. Like I say, if you do have any other questions or queries about anything, that's my email address, nickcraggs@fi.co.uk. So if anything pops up, just pop me an email. I think you and Gareth are amazing. I will let Gareth know. But yeah, like I say, any questions or queries, I have recorded this, including my webcam dying, and I will send out a recording to you all anyway, even those that you did or didn't attend, so you can go back over it. But like I say, any questions or queries, just pop me an email at nickcraggs@fi.co.uk. So unless anyone suddenly starts writing a question in the next 30 seconds, I will let you go and have your cup of tea. Good question. Good question. Not much is the answer. What we teach is pretty much the same as what we did on AQ 2013, as what we did on AQ 2016. It's just how it is assessed. So the things we teach in working effectively are the same exciting things like ethics and policies and procedures that we taught on AQ 2013. However, it's just how it is assessed. So now it's just in that synoptic exam, in that integrated approach, but the actual subject knowledge is the same. Whereas bookkeeping transactions, other than the way we calculate settlement discounts, is exactly the same as AQ 2013 as it was on AQ 2010 and AQ 2003. It really hasn't changed that much.